this is Matt Harris with the Verado Podcast, doing a quick one here about Magento, one of my favorite topics. Magento, also Adobe Commerce. So for those of you that don't know, let me just reintroduce the concept. Magento is the core engine that's underneath, it's open source, it's underneath the Adobe Commerce or Adobe Cloud commerce solution. So when people say Adobe Commerce and Magento, they're basically saying the same thing. Think of Magento as the engine and Adobe Commerce as this enterprise wrapper that goes around it. That's basically what it is. So what's the misconceptions? One misconception, and I've heard this numerous times at some industry events I've been to, drives me nuts. Why are you still using Magento? I hear that all the time. And the reality is Magento does things really, really well that Shopify can't do really, really well. And so there's a very good reason for people to still be on Magento or Adobe Commerce. And most of it has to do with the customizability, privacy of data, and integrations for B2B and complex integrations with like older ERPs, CRMs, existing back office systems, et cetera. The other is it's frankly can be much, much, much more affordable, particularly when you get to these large scale builds. You don't have the same take rate as Shopify. So there's a lot of businesses saving hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars every year by not using Shopify. So there's reason number one. It's just more affordable for certain kind of builds because the take rates are lower, the data's private, and you don't have to rev share with your SaaS vendor. That's number one. Number two is this thing, and I don't know how much I know about this, but Adobe made a big announcement. They're going to be moving into this Adobe Commerce or Adobe Commerce Cloud. So they're going to SaaSify Adobe Commerce. I'll get into that a little bit in a second, but let me just give you the misconception. I heard this at a conference, and they said Adobe Commerce is going to refactor the e-commerce engine into Java. Someone said that to me, and I was like, what? That is just nuts. So, of course, I just said, I don't think that's happening. And then, of course, I did some more research, and of course, it's not happening. It's a PHP system. It doesn't make any sense for them to leave PHP. They lose the entire advantage of sticking with the open source system as the core. The misconception might be that Adobe Experience Manager is basically their enterprise content management system that's got all the bells and whistles and tracking and reporting and AI and all of the huge advantages of the Adobe, graphic interface. That entire suite is Java-based. But that doesn't mean they're taking Adobe Commerce and making it Java-based. It means that Adobe Experience Manager is Java-based. It's still going to be an add-on, but I don't think they're going to re-engineer the whole thing. If they are going to do that, I don't know about it, and they're probably not announcing it yet. But I think that would be a very, very, very strange decision to make. So Adobe announced that they're going to create this Adobe Commerce Cloud, essentially a version of Adobe Commerce Cloud that's going to be behind a firewall, essentially. They're going to create a SaaS solution with Adobe Commerce at the core of it. So Magento, essentially. So Magento is going to be the engine. It's been that way the whole time. But now they're going to basically cut off the source code from the developers. So the idea is that the merchants think that the open source software is got too many maintenance hours for developers. It's too reliant on developers to keep it working, and therefore it makes the maintenance costs really high, and it also makes there's a million ways that you can break it, which makes it kind of unstable. That's the perception, right? So the idea is close it off and then integrate into the engine, the e-commerce engine, with apps. Essentially the same way that Shopify works. So what they're going to do, they've announced this in June, supposedly, is they're going to take the engine of the e-commerce platform and essentially close it off to developers. It will no longer be open within the cloud ecosystem. So if you sign on as a merchant and you get Adobe Commerce as a cloud service, you can no longer have your engineers go in there and access the source code. They'll be cut off from the source code, and you'll have to integrate through an app. So the idea is that it's essentially a safety net for the merchants. Like, it's going to make the system more stable. It also, frankly, gives Adobe more control over how companies interact with the software. So they might think that this will be like a potential reputation gain for them. The platform will become more stable, and therefore it'll have a better reputation as being easy to use with the merchants. I think there's something to that. I also think that because of this, they can maybe increase their fees a little bit. So there might be a financial gain for them in that. Again, as long as it benefits the merchants, I'm all for it. If this is like a way for Adobe to simply gain more control and have more leverage over the merchants so they can extract more money out of them, I'm against it. It could be a little bit of both, but I think that I'm gonna take the high road and assume they're doing it for what they see as a perceived deficit in the platform, and that by closing it off, there is a perceived benefit to doing this, right? So the idea is this new Adobe Commerce as a cloud service, it's going to give you faster deployments, automatic updates, so you don't have to go to your dev team to run the updates. It's going to give you higher performance because they're utilizing this edge delivery service. So it's going to essentially like create a higher speed e-commerce experience, supposedly. And then it's going to be AI-powered content. So they're extracting probably some of the knowledge, tools, features, functions of Adobe Experience Manager, and you're going to be able to inherit that. I think you can still run it and not have Adobe Experience Manager, but they're definitely trying to come to the marketplace as thinking these are two pieces of a puzzle where they work really good together, and you're going to get the advantages of both. So again, like Adobe Experience Manager is a whole other conversation, but Adobe's presenting this as two pieces of the puzzle that are going to fit together really well, and you're going to get this leverage of some of the AI tools that they've been working on. And then it's going to, be scalable. So, yeah, and again, it's like, seamless Adobe integration, native integration with Adobe Express, Firefly, etc. And then they have Adobe Commerce Optimizer, which is also part of this, which includes improved front-end performance, easy integration, AI-enhanced merchandising, which is kind of one of the big features, again, of Adobe Commerce and Adobe Experience Managers, that personalized shopping experience. I think they're looking at pushing more of this into the system, and that it can be more stable and predictable with higher performance by closing it off, right? That's the argument they're making. And, maybe they're right. Now, of course, the problem is, and the potential risk for them, which I'm sure they probably have thought of, is does addressing these perceived market deficits or issues actually kill off the strengths of the platform? So there's going to be developers for sure who are going to argue that the open source nature of the platform is the strength. And the fact that a large company with experienced developers can take the core technology and customize it to what their needs are is the core strength of the platform. And that by removing that, you're actually taking away its key strength. I think that's an interesting argument, and I think there'll be a lot to be said about that in the future. Now, open source isn't going away. So you can always take Magento as the core engine and it's open source and do all these customizations. If somehow that becomes not true for whatever reason, like let's just say Adobe somehow, uses their position to kind of cut off open source as an option, the open source community will 100% take their toys and go away. I absolutely guarantee you that's going to happen. So there will always be an open source solution for e-commerce. I mean, I strongly believe that. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. There's other open source platforms out there too. So open source will always be there as an avenue. This idea that there's going to be an on-prem. So the other thing is there's a third option is to take the Adobe Commerce, essentially the Magento core, enterprise wrapper, and still host it yourself and still make it private, which is basically what we do a lot. We do a lot of that work. So it's kind of the best of both worlds in our mind, because you get the enterprise wrapper and you get the privacy and you get the customizability and you can control the take rate. So we put it up on a server, we lease that server out to our clients, or we put it on our client's server, and then we build enterprise level solutions for them, and we partner with them, and they pay us as a partner to maintain their stuff. And essentially that's been super successful for us on the Harris WebWorks side. I don't think that's going to go away either, but it could go away. And I think that's really risky, because I think there's a lot of big companies that want to work that way. And they're basically saying, and there's a lot of huge enterprises that are working this way. And they're basically going to tell Adobe, do you want to keep getting our commissions every year? Do you want to keep getting, the millions of dollars that we're paying you every year, or the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we're paying you every year? If you want that money, you're going to be able to present us with a solution that on our terms. So there's a lot of businesses out there that want to have the enterprise software, but host it themselves. So this idea that Adobe Commerce on-prem is going to go away, I just don't think that's going to happen. I think I'd be very surprised. So going back to this cloud version where the source code is cut off, is there a pathway for Adobe to start gobbling up market share from Shopify? And I think that that's the strategy. I think that's actually what they're trying to do. Open source is the Wild West. It's too complex. It's too dev heavy. It's too reliant on agencies to make it work well. So how can those are the weaknesses of open source, and those are some of the same weaknesses of Adobe Commerce. How do we fix that? We put the core engine on a server, a cloud server, and we close it off, and we run the updates for you. We host it for you, and we scale it for you. And we can't have another third party coming in and breaking it. And that's going to remove a lot of the risks. And then maybe we can, by scaling that platform as an offering, this cloud commerce as an offering, maybe we can start lowering our price point for smaller merchants. And maybe that's how they take away some of the market share from Shopify. I'm sure that's what they're thinking. And that could happen. But basically, it's like, if this is your spectrum of merchants, companies, and you've got enterprise over here, and you've got small business in here. If you move the needle down to here and you're looking at B2C, it's almost all Shopify, with some exceptions. There's some WooCommerce mixed in there. It's just some older Magento stuff we're moving there. And then you get into the B2B space and you get into the enterprise space, and you see Shopify just start to drop off. So it starts to decline. Both these companies are trying to get in the other person's territory. Shopify wants a piece of this enterprise stuff. They want a piece of the B2B business because they have to scale somehow. And Magento wants to go down market, but basically SaaSify the solution. And so they're going that way. Again, when a company like us takes Magento open source, hosted for you, and builds you a custom site on Magento open source, Adobe doesn't make any money. They make $0. So that's not a way for them to scale. They can't move the needle with that. So what they're trying to do, I think, is to build a solution that's more mid-market or SMB where they can make some money on it. And they're going to do this and announce it to the marketplace by saying, we're removing some of the risks of open source, which frankly makes a lot of sense. It makes sense from a strategy standpoint. Whether or not they can pull it off, I mean, we'll see. Again, I'm saying all of this, we're not even mentioning the other options that are out there. I wanted to do a series of talks like just about Adobe Commerce, Magento, and Shopify, and I wanted to kind of clear the air so that hopefully anyone listening to this podcast can understand the pros and cons and what the differences are. So I'm not bringing up the other probably half a dozen what I would say are real viable alternatives to the big two. I'll save that for another podcast. But anyway, I think I said my fill. There's a lot more I could say here, but I think I got most of it off my chest. Again, when I'm on LinkedIn and I'm, posting stuff and reading stuff, I do get triggered when I feel like people are being dishonest. Particularly they're being dishonest in a way that benefits them and enriches them. And it's at the expense of small businesses. That to me is where the gloves come off. Like if you're trying to take advantage of people and misinform them intentionally so that you can make more money and get your commission, sorry, that's not going to fly at all. Be honest, very least be honest. I'll forgive you if you're stupid, but if you're being dishonest, sorry, no forgiveness. And I will say something. Well, anyways, folks, that's it. That's the end of our show. Thank you for listening. It's Verato, VARATO.com. Check us out where you check out podcasts. Just search for Verato on your podcast player. Check out our YouTube channel. Follow us and check us out on LinkedIn. We might be popping up on some more channels later, but for now, podcast, YouTube, LinkedIn. Thanks for listening. Catch us next time. Bye.